work at a Walmart that is closer to a supercenter than a store. I had an experience with our store ghost and have had several more since the first. I have never been a skeptic, but I still rely on practical evidence to base any claims or beliefs on. Since I was much smaller, I have always been sensitive to paranormal activity and creatures. I have a knack for it, I suppose. In any case, I digress. For background information, I think I need to explain how I know there could be an entity in the building to begin with. My father has worked at this store for over 20 years now, further back in his career as a Walmart employee. He and the whole staff were present for the dramatic death. An employee had been going through a rough breakup with an abusive boyfriend. She had even gone so far as to request an escort to her car every night for fear of her ex. This woman came to work and her ex showed up. When she refused to return home with him, he drew a gun, not on her, but rather on himself. There, in the parking lot, he shot himself and died instantly. This event was disturbing enough that most of the staff took a mental health day. My father did not. Now, as I work more during the nights than any other time, I find myself alone fairly often. Most of my work after hours is monotonous and tedious, making the shelves look nice for the following day. My first experience was when I was putting things away in the garden center. After 9 p.m., they dim the lights in this area. It's the only place in the store that is left without tile flooring. It is also completed with metal racks instead of an abundance of shelving. Basically, it's already an uncomfortable space to be in by yourself. Now, there are 2 pairs of electric doors, one that leads outside the back of the building and one that leads to our greenhouse. Both are locked after 9 p.m. just as the lights are turned off. Under normal circumstances, they do not open. Not this time. I'm walking aisle to aisle in my efforts to put away returns. This night, I have no headphones, so I'm just listening to music over the loudspeaker. My footsteps echo against the concrete floor, and every item I place on the shelves rattles. It's sometime during this back and forth that I hear the door slide open. Thinking a co-worker had opened it to put away some mulch, I walk out and look around, ready to greet them. No one. I look about and even check the door to find the button still in a locked position. Annoyed rather than unnerved, I go back to my work. On a trip to the cart, I froze. Behind me, the door slides open. I slowly turn around to see no one. Now, I am uncomfortable and not wanting to linger for any longer than I have to. I switch from a slow walk to an almost jog. I'm putting stuff away as quickly as possible when it decides to open and close much more rapidly than it should. I simply take off, telling myself I am just tired. Turns out they caught it all on camera and inquired about it. The parking lot suicide man struck the first time and many times after. I'm going to talk about 3 of my past houses. Each of them I have had different experiences with, not feeling alone. Although I think I haven't seen one, I'm not too sure if I have. The first house is where I had spent half of my life. My mother lived there for nearly 17 years, and as far as I know, she has never had a paranormal experience there, but my siblings believe they have. My first encounter wasn't until I was 9 or 10. I was simply sleeping as I usually would do. Then downstairs, I would hear what sounded like the TV playing. This was at 1 a.m. by the way, and what sounded like my mother and her partner at the time having a conversation. This was usual when us kids went to bed, but not at this time as it was a weekday. I went downstairs to get a drink, fully expecting them to be there, and asked why I was up. I started heading downstairs and the sound stopped. I then entered the living room and it was near pitch black besides a lamppost on the street shining in some light. The TV was off, and my mother and her partner weren't there either. I was somewhat spooked by this, but I shrugged it off once I went into the kitchen. I then head back to bed and decided that I would just ask her in the morning. The next morning, I asked her what she was doing at 1 a.m. last night, and she said that she was asleep. This freaked me out a little, but I managed to stay neutral to my mother. I asked my two sisters about this, and they said that they hear the exact same noises at the peak of night, but for the remainder of our time at that house, I always slept with the covers over my head. This lasted about 2 years before we finally moved out. That house is no more than 30 years old, and the previous owner was an old man that moved into a care home. No one, as far as I know, has died in that house. Still spooks me today. The house we moved in directly after the last one above was not equally as strange, but almost as strange. During the day, it was a place not to really call home, but as a "we will move out of this place in the coming year" type of home. But after everyone went to bed, I would get a feeling that someone was in the house that was not welcome there. This happened whenever the boiler in the downstairs bathroom was making a racket. Not much else happened in that house after that, as once again, we moved out, never went and investigated. The house is a converted storehouse or barn and is only about 15 years old. The house we currently live in is the only one that everyone has had some kind of strange cold feeling, only at night. It was the strongest when we first moved in, where all of us took some time to just get to sleep. My mother felt it, me and my siblings felt it, but my now stepdad never felt it as far as I know. We currently have an undeveloped space on the top floor that we use as an attic. We all did hear some strange noises coming from that room, but we all just dismissed it as a colony of mice or something. Then all of a sudden, the activity just stopped. We all started having normal sleeps again. This lasted only a year. Then I started having cold feelings again, but no one else was. Twice I had to turn on the lights and look around to the room just to make sure I wasn't being watched. I have no webcam or anything. I always have those "did I just see something?" moments and look back and there is nothing there. So far, haven't seen anything. It's all just very strange. I should also mention that nothing was built on these houses before they were built, and the third house isn't even 11 years old. So where this came from, I have no idea. I made this account just to post this because I can't get over it. I've practically told everyone I know, but I want to tell even more people. I posted on our paranormal, but it didn't get much attention. So, here it is again. So I'm a 17-year-old girl and my family has lived in the same house since I was 4. It was built in 1907. I know everyone says their house is haunted, especially if it's old, but me and my whole family are literally 10,000% sure ours is. It's even turned my dad into a believer. If you knew him, you'd know what a big deal that is. This would be 10 pages long if I listed everything that's ever happened, but some significant events. Things move all the time. The stove has turned on by itself right in front of our eyes on multiple occasions, and there's a table in the entryway that never stays put. Doors open and close by themselves. Not a day goes by that we don't hear clear footsteps on the stairs. We've also heard the upstairs bathroom faucets turn on by themselves, but we've never actually seen that happen. Once my bathroom was being remodeled, so I took a shower in the one bathroom in the house that doesn't have an exhaust fan. All the other bathrooms have had one added. And when I got out, there was a drawing of a shoe in the fog on the mirror. Weird noises are constantly coming from the basement, etc., etc. Almost everyone who's ever spent the night at our house, regardless of what they believe when they walked in, leaves believing in ghosts. Even as a teenager, I've had multiple friends leave in the middle of the night because they were scared. My parents are obsessed with our house and refuse to move, despite everything that's happened. It's a historic house and they've put a lot of work into it. Plus, nothing's ever harmed us, so they assumed it's safe. It sounds weird, but I've never been truly scared. I don't know if it's because I'm so used to it or because our ghosts aren't malicious, but I'm just not afraid. Anyway, I've never actually seen a ghost until yesterday. Neither had anyone else in my family. It all just been weird occurrences, not actual sightings. But here's what happened last night. Our house is 3 stories and I live on the top floor with one of my brothers. He's also 17 if that matters. I'm a triplet. Our rooms are right across the hall from each other. I was sitting on my bed with my door open and he was in his room with his door closed. It was around 11. All of a sudden, I heard footsteps on the stairs, so I looked up, not expecting anyone to be there because there never is. But then, this boy just walked through my door, in the flesh, as real as you can get. I have 2 other brothers who live on the 2nd floor, 15, and then the other triplet, 17. So I automatically assumed the boy was one of my brother's friends who'd come over without me knowing, and then wandered into my room. My last thought was a ghost. I got freaked out, but not for the reason you'd think. I was scared because I thought he was gonna try to pull something weird. I didn't know why he'd walk into his friend's sister's room so late at night. He didn't say anything, and I froze for a second. But then I finally asked him who he was and what he was doing. He didn't answer. He just kind of stood in the middle of the room, several feet away from my bed. My room is pretty big, and looked around all dazed and confused. That freaked me out even more, so I ran past him and into my brother's room. I told him there was a boy in my room who I assumed was either his or one of our other brother's friends, and he looked like he was on drugs or something. My brother freaked out too, said he didn't have a friend over, and rushed into my room to confront him. Then he came back like 2 minutes later and told me he couldn't find anyone. We went back in my room together and checked literally everywhere, the closet, under the bed, etc. But there was no one. I do have a balcony in my room, but there's no way he could have left that way, because not only would he have heard the balcony door open, it's really creaky, but it was double locked and there would have been no time to open it. Plus, getting down from the 3rd-story balcony without hurting yourself is next to impossible. But we did check the balcony just to be super safe. When we couldn't find anyone, we went to my other brothers and asked them if they had any friends over. They both said no, so we woke up our parents and told them what happened. My dad told me and my mom to go outside and wait while he and my brother searched every single room of the house. They didn't find anyone or any unlocked doors. Everyone was so freaked out that we ended up calling the police, but they didn't find anything either. The police are convinced I was dreaming, but I know for a fact that I was awake. Me and my family are all almost certain it was a ghost. So yeah, I'll literally never get over this. This is a long story and a lot to explain. I try not to think about it much, and a lot of people don't believe me when I talk about it. My story is about my house I grew up in, lived in it for 18 years and moved out last year. It was a very large house that was about 120 years old. In my family, there were 6 of us, 4 kids. I'm the youngest of them. Growing up, when you heard a bump in the night, you would assume it was one of my siblings doing something. But in the morning when I asked, nobody was up at that time. There were hundreds of things I encountered in that house, but the scariest thing was the way that the thing was in my bed since birth. We had a basement that we used for storage, and in the back corner was always the smell of death and roses. Also in that corner was shards of something that was broken ceramic. We lived there for 18 years, and for some reason, we all knew not to sweep up the shards or to put anything in that corner. We didn't get a bad feeling. It was as if every time we went to clean it up, we suddenly forgot why we were there. I used to have nightmares almost every single night, but whenever I left the house for the night, all I wanted to do was go back home. And even though I hardly slept, it was like it was calling me back to the house. As my siblings grew up, they moved out and went to school in the city 30 minutes away. When it was just me and my one sister in the house, things really started to get bad. Things would go missing, but nobody took them. I would hear my sister call my name, only to find out she wasn't even home. But the strangest thing by far was how angry this thing suddenly got. In a strange way, I feel as if I felt like we were its kids. So us leaving one by one made it upset. One night, we woke up to the sound of glass smashing. We all went to investigate, but no glass was ever found anywhere. The following night, I heard glass smash, but only I woke up. I went to go find where it came from, but again, nothing. I went to the kitchen to get water, and as I looked up, I saw it in the reflection of the kitchen window above the sink. Standing at the end of the hallway was an older woman in a black dress with no face. I got chills and ran to my room. I wasn't scared, and she looked familiar, as if I'd already seen her before. That's when I realized she was a common figure in my nightmares. Why didn't I tell anyone? For some reason, we all felt that it wasn't safe to talk about it when we were in the house because it was always listening. A couple months later, my brother and his girlfriend stayed overnight. She is native and is very involved spiritually. The second she entered the house, she didn't like how she felt. She brought up at dinner that she felt like she was being watched. Every single piece of me wanted to tell her to run and that she wasn't crazy, but I just couldn't talk. It wouldn't let me. Eerily, minutes after she said that, she came down with a fever. She and my brother decided to sleep in the living room since she felt even worse in my brother's room. More on that room later. She woke up in the night because someone was talking to her. She woke up to see that the same woman I did standing on top of her, speaking at her. She screamed and my brother woke up and told her she needed to calm down. The next morning, she was about to tell us what happened at breakfast, but my sister shook her head in a panic and said don't. I was about to do the exact same thing. About a year later, my sister had moved out and left me alone with it. Because I was old enough, my parents started going out of town for days at a time. On one of these times, I heard someone crying right outside my room. I swear I was up for hours, laying completely still, listening to it crying. Another time I was on the phone with my friend and she asked who was talking to me, but nobody was there and the TV wasn't on. My friend came over to swim late at night, and after thrashing in the water for a few moments, she popped up and screamed at me, claiming I was pushing her head underwater. A lot of my friends didn't come over more than a few times before they were scared shitless. The last year I lived there was the most active. The first time my boyfriend slept over, I gave him a whole list of instructions on what not to do. My number one rule was to never leave the room at night, and if you do, then don't look in any mirrors or windows. He of course didn't take it seriously and went downstairs for water and looked in the kitchen window. He said he saw her behind him smiling and he doesn't remember coming back upstairs. But that's where we both woke up. The second last bad encounter was a month before we moved. I was home alone and a friend of mine came over to help with a project. And as we approached the front door, I got a horrible feeling. We both stopped walking and she felt it too. We went in anyways and agreed that we were gonna get our stuff and go. We walked in and the whole house came alive. We heard a door slam from down the hall. Then from above us came footsteps from my brother's bedroom. The footsteps went all the way to the door and then it opened on its own. But nobody came out. She refused to leave the foyer, so I sprinted to my room and grabbed my stuff. On the way out of my room, there she was, standing in the corner, but I kept running. I yelled down the hall for her to go outside, but she was staring directly at the basement door. I ran up to her and we watched in horror as the basement door slowly opened. We waited about 20 seconds, frozen in silence, and then I heard the familiar sound, glass shattering. We ran out of the house and got in the car. She looked at me dead in the eyes and apologized profusely. I told her it's not her fault, and she decided to then tell me how her parents had her exorcised as a baby. She also went on to say that she felt like there was an older woman present who died tragically. A few days before we moved, I was watching TV in the den across from my room. I was dozing off and heard something large fall over. I ran into my room and saw that my marble makeup table had somehow been knocked over and broken. I felt the hand on my shoulder and smelled my boyfriend's shampoo and felt calm for a moment, and for some reason I believed he was there. It then dawned on me that it wouldn't even make sense for him to be there. The exact second I realized it was there, it whispered, "Don't leave." I got so scared that I ran out of the house and called my boyfriend to come get me. When he arrived, we went in and sure enough, we saw the makeup table knocked over and broken. I felt a bit better now that he was there, so I went to grab my sweater from the den, and in the moments I was outside, it had knocked every single book off the shelf, and a picture of our family that was on the wall was smashed but still hanging up. It's been a year since I lived there, but every single day I feel a pull to go back. I've talked about the house with my siblings and they described seeing the same woman and loads of other encounters. In a strange way, I feel like I have heard the thing that tormented me for 18 years, and in a stranger way, I want to go back and live with it again. Edit. All of us have had a strange thing happen throughout the year. My boyfriend still lives in that town, and once I was driving to his house and suddenly I was pulling into the driveway of the house. My sister, who has been out of the house for years, once went to go to the grocery store and ended up in the driveway of the house.